Yeah. But on that, you can select HDMI or line, I think. Click the gear. Yeah, connection line or HDMI. Yeah. Now, I don't know why audio in. Okay. I don't know why audio 1 is the one, though. Because there's only one line in, I guess. Well, what's on that gear if you click on it? Nothing. Just fades and... Oh, you can pick? But if you hit PC, is it going to bring the HDMI signal or the line signal? Hit PC. I guess you could close. Check. Which one did you do? Sound? No, so it must be trying to pull the HDMI, which is not going to pull. So they probably have the audio turned off on the camera too. No, it had to be sound, I think is what you were clicking. The sound fader. That's effects. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Test 1, 2, 3. Let Test 1, 2, 3. Let's see when I go come on again.
Good morning, America. Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. Test 1 2 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again.
Good morning, America. Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. Test 1 2 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Check.
Good morning,
1
America.
2.
Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. Test 1 2 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Check.
Good morning,
1
America.
2.
Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. Test 1 2 3. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Check 1 2 1 2 3. Check.
Good morning,
1
America.
2.
Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. Let's see when I go. Come on again. Check 1 2 1 2 3. Check.
Good morning,
1
America.
2.
Good morning to the helpers, the natural caretakers, to those looking for more in life. If you dream about working in the medical...
Check 1 2 1 2. Check. Check 1 2 1 2. Check. Check 1 2 1 2. Check. Check 1 2 1 2 3. Check 1 2 1 2 3.
2, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check. 3, 4, check. Okay, check. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, check.
You want to give him? Doesn't matter. Okay.
Distinguished panel. Tell me your name. How are you? You're really in touch, right?
You all set?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure today to welcome a panel that's going to continue the conversation that we started at Convocation regarding equity and continued on November the 4th when Mr. William Abernathy joined us. He is back with us today. Please help me welcome Mr. Abernathy. We also bring you Sebi Sanchez, who is a Lyman High School student. We have Hannah Little, who is a Seminole State student. And Professor Diana Campbell. I'm Janet Balanoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Equity and Diversity and the Title IX Coordinator here. I'm not on the panel. I'm your moderator for today. I would like to ask each of our panelists very quickly to give us a brief introduction, and then we'll go into the program that we have for you today as we continue the conversation and talk about whether we have achieved the dream. We are celebrating, of course, the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. last week, and we are leading into Black History Month. So this event bridges those two events with last night's inspiring performance. Wasn't that beautiful? And you were a part of it. You were the narrator for I Have a Dream, followed by Lyman and Seminole State under the direction of Professor Campbell performing with the Orlando Philharmonic section that backed them or featured them, and their beautiful voices melded together in I Have a Dream, both spoken and sung, played by the Orlando Philharmonic. So I would ask you to take a couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started.
Tess, I'm William Abernathy. I'm so happy to be here amongst these other distinguished panelists. Today, this is my second time visiting your school and having this opportunity to share with you my perspectives of social injustice from the perspective of Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Ralph David Abernathy, who is my namesake. He is a cousin. And last time I got a chance to talk to you a little bit about my perspective through some personal experiences in the civil rights movement, some individual experiences, some perspectives that I've held historically. Right now I'm working for Kaiser University as an admissions counselor. I work very hard, so you should feel sorry for me right there. I'm not like you guys. I work nights. I work one Saturday a weekend. Oh, my God. I work the whole holiday. I got Christmas Day off. Pray for me. But I love what I do because I'm interfacing with students, and I'm not only helping them make the right choices about careers and degrees, but I'm helping them with their personal lives as well and make the right steps. It's really important to me to do that because I didn't really have that person there for me, so that's what I really love about what I do, helping students make the right decision, whether it's our school or another school. I am happily married to my beautiful wife, Monica Abernathy, 43 years of trying to learn what unconditional love is from her perspective. So it's not anything that we're doing except for just praying and living under God's grace and mercy. And that's about as much as I can say about me. I do have my master's degree, have honorary doctorate degree, but my best degree is life experience. Somebody said PhD is not just having piled high and deep, but it's being past having your doubts. So that's my doctorate degree.
Thank you, Sebi.
Hi, I'm Sebi. My real name's Sebastian, but you know, my nickname is Sebi. Yeah, it's very distinguished, Sebastian. I'm a 10th grader. I go to Lyman High School. I love choir. I love everything about music. My specific genre is jazz, or like, all those old thingies like Sinatra, and like Michael Bublé is my like main source of that kind of music. It's just, that music makes me happy and it's fun. Choir is my favorite subject. It's like an escape.
That's right.
It's like an escape from the everyday. Like, yeah, there's theater, there's band, and I'm in band too, but choir has this other thing that's like more, I don't know, like it's like each person has their own little thing. I tell everyone in the class, because I help my teacher, Mr. Hart, I say, hey, I see talent in every one of you guys. I know you guys are here for a reason. And I know, like you say, oh, I can't sing, my throat hurts. And I'm like, okay, yeah, reasons, but hey, you're here for a reason, and I love everyone. I don't care if like what background you come from, if you're you have disabilities, color, beliefs. I don't care what you are. Just if you're you and you're very respectable, then yeah, I love you and respect you. So that's pretty much me.
Very wonderful. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah Little. I'm currently a freshman here at Seminole State. I'm a music major, and I plan on continuing my music education degree at University of North Florida starting next fall. Next fall? It's coming fall. Next fall. Yeah. I'm actually a Lyman High School alumni, so this entire experience was way more special for me than most students here. It was really great to work with Ms. Campbell and Mr. Hardin together, and honestly just to see how much I've grown since I left last May. But yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Professor Campbell.
So I'm Diana Campbell. I'm the Director of Choral Activities at Seminole State. I've been here for 16 years. And I think it was even more special for me than Hannah, because I've only had 2 jobs in my career, and that was 15 years at Lyman High School and 16 years here at Seminole State. So it was just this evening or last night's was extra special for me. But we're on bio right now. So 16 years at Seminole State. My bachelor's is in music education. I have a master's in choral conducting. I work on with the ACDA, American Choral Directors Association Board. I like to get out there and do a lot of my professional development. I graduated from University of Florida and University of South Florida. I think that's it for bio.
Okay. Thank you very much. Professor Campbell, I'm going to start with you and ask you, if you would, to talk about last night's choral performance and the themes and formats that you used to bring such drama to I Have a Dream.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do so. So I thought it would be, I would like to kind of take you from inception of the thought to the stage and just sort of take you on that journey with me. So when I attended my national conference, the American Choral Directors Association, and I'm always looking for new works. I'm looking for something fresh and something new. And there was a big push for living composers. And so living composers had set up booths and were sharing their music. And so I'm going around, what do you have that's different? What do you have? And I met a man named Charles Dickerson. And same thing, what do you have that's new and different? He goes, oh, I'd like you to take a listen to this. Well, the title alone captivated me because I love masterworks. And if you see, we can curate till the cows come home on a masterwork. But it's so fun when I can find a masterwork that uses non-traditional text. And in 31 years, I've never seen anybody take Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream and score it for orchestra. So in and of itself, the idea was very exciting to me. And then put on the headphones. He said, listen to it. I've got a recording of it. And so I listened to it. I needed like 5 seconds. You had me at I Have a Dream, right? So I listened to it. I looked at the score and decided I've got to do this work. I've got to do this work. Now, when? Because I'm known for holding on to a work until it's the right time. There was also a big mantra, if you will, last year of perform to inspire and not to impress. And so I've really been using that as a guide this year with a lot of the repertoire and things that I'm doing. I found that profound. Let's perform to inspire, not to impress. Impressing would be great, but so I thought this work checked that box for me as well. So where do we program this, right? So we come back, and there were some issues on campus, as you might know, and so we're looking for places to go for holding performances, but we have an invitational, a high school invitational concert series that we do, and we're in our 7th year. So I asked Lyman High School if they would be interested in participating, and Mark Hardin said yes. I was thrilled about that. And when we agreed to do this, the invitational has always been in November, but of course this work doesn't work in November. It had to be in January, and we were trying to get it, right there. Could it be right on Martin Luther King's Day? Could it transition? And so we came up with the 28th with all the calendars that we were balancing. And agreed we have found the right time, and I had actually found the right person. Mark has the same heart for social justice, was just as inspired by the work as I was. But it's a 38-page masterwork in 8-part divisi, and if you know anything about choral music, that's a little intimidating. And my college choir, I have no questions, but I remember I taught high school for 15 years too. And so for him to be willing, he said, "I'm nervous about this, but I think we can get it done." And I'm like, "We're gonna work it out. We're gonna make it work one way or another. We'll balance this out." So the next component then was we've agreed on this work. Now I'm working with the composer himself. So Charles Dickerson is based out of UCLA, out in California, and started contacting him. Hey, I need to purchase scores, and then I need the orchestrations. And I come to find out that the conductor score had never even been printed. So he had to go through the process of getting all this orchestration and get it printed because, hey, now you've got somebody who wants to purchase your music. Now, and we've got to get this done. So he was working under a timeline to get that score into my hands. So I believe Lyman High School started rehearsals with this sometime in September. So as soon as we got the choral score, Lyman jumped in there. Now, we had a whole other concert to go through and everything else. So my college choir, we did a concert in November, and when we finished that concert in November, we got the scores to I Have a Dream. And so we started it a little bit last semester. They got a few weeks with the preparation last semester, and then we jumped into it day one this semester. And of course, at the college, it's a little bit different. We lost some students last semester, right? But I said, you were in it. You can still sing with us now. And then we had students who joined us now who had never seen the work, and they rose to the challenge, and in 8 rehearsals joined us on that stage too. So we had the full gambit of kind of rehearsal processes. Within that time, there were times I would go and I would work with Lyman. So I would go to sectionals over at Lyman High School, and my students would come. So if there was a female section, maybe my section leaders from my soprano and alto section would go out there, and we did some work with it that way. Then we had a combined rehearsal scheduled for January 15th, but this is live music and schedules are interesting. So we had a rehearsal scheduled for the 15th that was supposed to be with the orchestra. And we'll get to working with a union orchestra in a moment. Let's see. Orchestra, so 15th. Contract said that we were going to rehearse at Lyman High School on the 15th. That was our designated time. Something happened, and we didn't have the 15th. At Lyman. Lyman was not available. They could do this date, but they couldn't do the 15th. But no, I already have a contract for union musicians for the 15th, and I couldn't change that date. So we rewrote the contract, and we brought it back to here. Mrs. Parker, who's always helping me reorganize everything, found us a spot here, told the whole orchestra, brought Lyman here instead, and we had on the 15th, we went ahead and just did a rehearsal over there. We brought the orchestra rehearsal back over here 22nd. There was just a lot of craziness in trying to deal with the schedule. But that's what we do, right? As you know, right now we don't have a home base, but at least, Lyman and I were working back and forth with all of our scheduling. So we ended up having one totally combined rehearsal of voices with Mrs. Parker on piano as our accompanist, and then we had one 2-hour rehearsal with the orchestra. And imagine for the students the change of tone color when you go from the piano to now you're hearing it in the oboe or you're hearing it in the violin, and it could be the same exact note, same rhythm, but when you change that tone color, it changes it for the students. So really important that they hear that. And of course, this is when Mr. William Abernathy got to join us as well. Let me take a moment and talk about how we got wonderful Mr. William Abernathy with us. So as I was creating this idea, I said, this work itself calls for this is not just choral music. This is education. This is civil justice. There was so much learning that needed to go with this. And I felt like maybe it didn't need to end with just that concert. So I talked with Janet, who was very excited about it too. And this was her idea. Well, where do we go from here? And so we started brainstorming. We need a panel discussion. We're saying, I have a dream. Where are we on this path? And I said, there's only one thing missing. I've got my orchestra. I've got my song. I've got everything. I don't have a narrator. I have to have the perfect narrator. Right? They've got to have, and Janet said, well, have you met Mr. William Abernathy? And helped to connect us. And I reached out, and his willing heart was over the top, and it just grew from there. So he jumped on it, was so willing. We met in Publix and talked in front of the fruit stand for 30 minutes. And but we do what
I didn't hear that part before.
And we exchanged CDs that way, and we worked through narration, and he's just been a joy to work with. So now we have all of the components. We come to the orchestra rehearsal. So as I mentioned, we're working with professionals, and let me tell you, we really did in some ways get the cream of the crop. Rima Bergeret-Langlois is the concert master for the Orlando Philharmonic. So we actually had the concert mistress of the Philharmonic leading the way for us, and some very, very fine players. But then this is where, again, I had to make some decisions because the orchestral score calls for a 28-piece orchestra. That would be my budget for the next 10 years. So I have to say, okay, it's 20, I can't do that. I looked at my budget, and I figured out budget-wise I could afford 13 instruments, okay? Now I have to look at the score and figure out which 13 instruments, because there are 4 horn parts and 2 trumpet parts and 2 trombone parts and violin 1. And if these are doubling each other, then I don't need trombone 1 and trumpet 1 and this one because they're doubling parts, so you have to go in there and okay. And then I'm asking violin 1, would you play from the violin 1 on here and then go to this measure here? And I'm sorry if I'm talking too much music stuff, but it was a lot of music rearranging and trying to make sure that it sounded authentic like it was. And I love it because the wonderful Mrs. Abernathy said to me that she had been listening to the CD created by the composer himself with the full orchestration, and it was so kind because she's like, I couldn't tell that anything was missing, and that just warmed my heart because we were missing more than half of what the instrumentation actually was. So that was kind of interesting. You know, when you're working with union musicians, it is very. If we start at 6, we start at 6, not 5:59. And and the students were just wonderful because at that rehearsal, they knew the focus was really on the musicians and timing the narration. So picture this: Dr. Abernathy has this narration that he's been working on, but he has no music to go behind it. I have music, but I don't have a narration, so we're both working on it. And now we're meeting the stage, and this, okay, can we time this perfectly, right? And so I said to him, I want you to have it. The narration had to be all about his inflection. Where you pause where you need to pause, you inflect where you need to. Don't slow down or speed up anything musically. You do what you need to do, and I think he did an impactful job with that. Yes, he did. Yeah. And so we did it the first time through, and I'm having to slow down or speed up based on where we are. Okay, first time through, no, I had to sit at a fermata for like a minute. No, I can't do that. Okay, and so we did it again, right? We did it again. I'm going to adjust the tempo a little bit so that you can, we're going to time this better, right? And so we ran it, and I think we ran it 3 times that night. We got through the narration 3 times before we took it to the stage, just to get that proper timing, so that I could make sure he got exactly what he needed, underscoring it. So that was really interesting. So we come to concert night, because understand that in the scheme of things now, we've all rehearsed, but we've never been in the place we're going to perform. Right? So everything that we've done so far with the orchestra, etc., was in the C building, and the C building's not my home, the J building's my home, but I digress. So we go to Lyman. Now, we're combining, I thought, what a great way to start this concert, that we also put some spirituals on, and we started the concert with Lift Every Voice and Sing. We thought it was very appropriate to do that. So we put the words in the program. Mrs. Parker played on piano, and we opened the concert by having all of Lyman's students in front of the audience, and my Seminole State students in the aisle. And Lyman High School learned the melody alone to lead, and my choir, of course, learned it in 4-part harmony to add that to it, accompanied by Mrs. Parker. And so we started the concert with Lift Every Voice and Sing. But again, we'd never been in there. So at 6 o'clock, before the concert starts at 7:30, at 6 o'clock, okay, let's figure this out. And the students, we did all of this logistics. They had to figure out where they were going, where they were standing. Then we got onto the risers. Again, we'd never been on risers together, so we had to figure out, how do we get them on, how do we get them off in 10, 15 minutes worth of time. We'd never rehearsed with the orchestra in line, and we never did. The downbeat, the first time we did the downbeat of the concert with orchestra and everyone was the concert. And that's a little nerve-wracking. But we made it work. And what made it work was that everybody was so invested, that students were listening intently. You could tell they really wanted a great concert as well. So at the concert, after Lift Every Voice and Sing, Lyman High School started off with a small ensemble and did Poor Wayfaring Stranger, this beautiful 6-part a cappella piece. They were preparing for solo and ensemble. And then my choir came up and we did 2 pieces. We did My Lord, What a Morning, and we did Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, arranged by John Sinclair from Rollins College and Bach Festival. So we ran that. Then my students kind of scattered on the risers, and Lyman students intermixed with us because we want to make sure that we have a nice mix of college and high school. And okay, we have soprano 2's here, soprano 1's here, and we're rearranging. I think we were herding cats for like, I don't know, 10 minutes. Yeah, and we ended up with 92 singers. So we were trying to arrange 92 singers in the 13, and we made it work. We practiced those logistics, and we downbeat at 7:30. Interestingly, when I talk about recordings, on a side note, there aren't really good recordings. So if you're like, oh, I want to hear this work, there aren't good recordings out there. I have a CD that was provided by Charles Dickerson, but if you go searching for YouTube, it's such a new work. We were the first group in the state of Florida to present this work. This work has never been done in the state of Florida, so it was a state premiere. And I was so excited about being able to do that as well. But you won't find good recordings out there yet, so I'm hoping to keep this up and maybe be able to provide a really quality recording for people to hear this great work.
Did your group get recorded?
I did an informal recording on my iPad.
Would that be shared, or that's
I don't know yet. I haven't watched it. We'll see. We did have one visual caveat, bless her heart. And I always think of Disney Candlelight, if any of you have ever seen the big groups, right? And an alto went down. And it's hard, folks. This is 30 minutes of contiguous music, right? It's not, even in a traditional masterwork, you would have the Kyrie movement, and then it stops. And we start the next movement. That's not this. This is 30 minutes of contiguous music, changing tempos, changing keys, doing all this that's just going. And so students have to have stamina, and they've been on their feet for a long time, and that's a lot of people to have on risers, right? It was getting a little bit crowded, maybe a little hot, maybe some knees locking, and so we're in the middle of the work, and an alto goes down. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This one right here, Mama on the spot, was properly positioned and knew what to do with her and helped. And I'm still conducting, but I'm like, I'm conducting down. But then the orchestra thinks I'm telling them to play down. No, I'm not telling them to play down. I want her to sit down. But we got her down, and she's okay. Checked on our alto today. She's just fine. All is well. So that, and so that's one of the reasons. I'm not sure. I mean, if I'm going to put it out there, I do think I have to watch and I have to see how that came off. So, but again, that's when I always say that's live music, right? That's what happens, and we go with it. And I was very proud of how the students handled that too. Orchestra didn't even know it had happened. They're like, well, yeah. So that's kind of the process, if you will, from thought to stage. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Abernathy, I would like to ask you now to relate some history for us with Dr. Martin Luther King's message, the kinds of things that went on in the struggles that he encountered working toward the dream, our real purpose today, to discuss the dream, what he encountered and the challenges faced, and the kinds of strategies that were used, and we're coming to the historical results, and then we'll get to perceptions in a little while.
Okay. Yeah, happy to do that. My understanding was expanded a little bit preparing for this, and the one thing that I always get a little concerned about is the commercialization of "I Have a Dream." The "I Have a Dream" speech, even his birthday, even Black History Month, I think is commercialized to the point that we're not having taking the opportunity to have an impact upon the world based on a man giving his life. Many people giving their lives during that movement. And so I'm like a lot of other people, I don't want his life to be reduced to a speech of "I have a dream," and then even having a misconception about that speech. Him having a dream. It wasn't, something that happened to him when he went to sleep. And he had pizza, and then all of a sudden he had this conception of "this is what I like to see." He was actually basing that whole speech, which was not even written. The speech writers were shocked that he inserted "I had a dream" into that speech. As a Baptist preacher, he became anointed at the end because, what is the singer's name? Ella Fitzgerald? Mahalia Jackson was behind him, pushing him, said, "Martin, tell him about the dream. Martin, tell him about the dream." So he pushed his notes aside. If you watch the video, go to YouTube, watch the video, he was really relying on his notes. He looked down, looked up. He was pretty good about that because the speech was written for him by several speech writers. One of them was an attorney that he refers to that. He noticed that he quit relying on the notes, and he went to that "I had a dream." The dream is based upon the direct Declarations of Independence. Does anybody know how to quote "We hold this true"? Who can do that? Quote, not read from the notes.
Quote?
Yes, quote. Who can?
Quote. I rest my case.
Okay. "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So everyone that comes to this country saying they're pursuing the American dream is basing that pursuit on this quote. This is the American dream. This is the place that you can come and pursue your goals and your visions and be allowed to do that. A goal is a dream with a plan. And that was provided to us in the Declaration of Independence. The founders said we have a Creator that has given this to us. It's our right, unalienable right. What's an inalienable right? An inalienable right is something that cannot be taken away or given away. So when I started breaking that down, I said that this man was brilliant. He wasn't talking about something he was dreaming that was an original to him. He was saying this is something that we all have access to or should have access to as related to our rights as American citizens. And so that changed my perspective not only on the speech and the march and even the man, as to what he wanted us to continue to do today. And what happens more often than not with the Declaration of Independence, the preamble to the Constitution, all of those things are kind of pushed to the side that gave a infrastructure for all of us to pursue the dream. Whatever your dream is. I want to own a business. I want to be president. I want to be president of my own company. I want my own children. I want to have property. I want to have whatever your dream is. You have a right to pursue that in this country because of the Constitution and because the colonists who were oppressed and not free were seeking the same dream for themselves, and they started in one place. They said the Creator, God, gave this to us, and there's our right to pursue that. And so I know why he became anointed to start preaching and stop speaking, to declare this not only for himself but for every American. And so now we even have that same concept placed at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Bring us your hungry and your poor. I'm paraphrasing. Longing to be free. Even immigrants, coming way after the Constitution was written and the Declaration, they had that same opportunity as long as they became what? Citizens. So what about those of us who are born here, who have that right by reason of our birthright, who become citizens in that way? What about people who actually built this country? Do you know, when you regress to what slavery meant economically, do you know all the slave states together, because of the free labor? And it wasn't just picking cotton. Slaves were used in every vocation that was needed, in manufacturing, everything. They made things. There was no need for you to pay anyone to do anything when you had free labor, and these people were smart enough to do whatever you need to do, make whatever you need to make. So the South was employing slavery in every walk of life to do anything they needed to do, in manufacturing and agriculture and everything. So the South, right before the Civil War, had the fourth highest economy in the world. In the world, can you imagine that? In the world, the youngest entity, the South, had the fourth highest economy. So this is what was pushing Dr. King when he talked about having a dream. So when I got that understanding, this is recent for me. This is why I'm so impassioned about it. Because I'm like you, I've been listening to the I Have a Dream speech. I've been hearing little children quote it. Oh, isn't that cute? They know the speech. But they're not really feeling the speech. They don't know the speech. They don't really know what they're saying. They're just smart enough to memorize something. And it's wonderful that they're doing that. But I want us from today on to have more of a importance towards I Have a Dream speech. I've grown to understand not only Dr. King, but Dr. Abernathy's contributions to human rights struggles by remaining unapologetically Christian, unashamedly black, and inheritedly American. I'm an American. And I had that challenged. My wife and I have gone to Africa twice. We went to South Africa when it was apartheid, and we went to West Africa. We've been to Canada, we've been to England, we've been to Mexico. And thank God for America. We had some, Africa is beautiful, but thank God for America. I mean, it's you know, even from where you drive in West Africa, you know, you can, in some parts of West Africa, you can drive wherever you want to. The lines don't mean anything. The lights don't mean anything. I mean, it's amazing what we have here in this country, what God has given us. So we found out our tribal ancestry. My wife is Calabar, and I am Yoruba. So our ancestry is very rich. It's important. It's noteworthy. It adds to who I am. It adds to what I can contribute to a society as a whole. But I am an American. Martin Luther King was an American. He was speaking to Americans. And so he was saying we all should have access to this dream. So let's not worry about memorizing the speech or what he said. Let's go back to the original document, the Declaration of Independence. Let's go back to even before that, what the Creator has given us. He's given us unalienable rights. What are they? Rights that cannot be taken or given away. And then what did we do after that? We instituted a government and a constitution that gave us 3 branches of government to make sure that those unalienable rights will be insulated and protected and ensured. That's what this country is all about. to make sure the judicial and the executive branch and the legislative branch, no matter who's in the executive branch, it doesn't matter, that system is in place so that our rights are protected, and every person, no matter who you are, what country you're from, if you're an American citizen, you have access to that. So why is it that we live in a country that ignored what the founding fathers intended to do? How is it that we, further after slavery was ended, how do we pass laws that said that it's right for us to have separate facilities, and laws that said that you can't vote, and laws that said that you can't pursue your education? How did that happen? I'd like to get into their minds. How did they ignore what the founding fathers said, that we want to avoid what's been done to us? This is the life that they lived in England. This is why they came to this country. This is why many of them died and sacrificed to come to this country, to start this country. They were escaping that kind of oppression. And then later said it's okay to do that to somebody else, just simply. And do you know that when all that was happening in the 1500s and the 1600s, do you know there was no word such as race that identified a person? That was a law that was created in the 1600s to distinguish people and to minimize people and to start a new class system so that certain people could be looked up as different. Nobody cared what color you were when they were escaping oppression and caste systems in Europe. In Europe, if you were born poor, you were going to be poor. If you were born a carpenter, that's what you were going to be. If you were born a slave, you were going to be a slave. If your family had debts, then your children are going to inherit those debts, but not in America. And that's why people came here. And that's why the Declaration of Independence was written. So the passion that he spoke from in giving that dream, giving that message, came from him having a revelation about our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. So what was the struggles that he encountered? Oh my God. Do you know when he took his first church assignment, he was only 25, I think. He was 25, he had gotten his PhD early. He graduated from high school when he was 15 and went right to college and got his master's, got his doctorate. He came to Montgomery. He got his first church assignment. Dr. Abernathy, my cousin, was already there pastoring. He's a little older, and took him under his wing and began to school him and mentor him, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden they're having these problems within the city of Montgomery, and they're trying to help each other, trying to help their parishioners, et cetera. And this is how the movement started. This is part of, and the movement was happening all over the country, by the way, all over the South. Not just these two men. A lot of people were involved. A lot of people were, rebelling against Jim Crow. So what were the struggles he involved? He was arrested more than 20 times. He was harassed by the FBI. And a lot of that did not come forward until the Truth in Lending Act. Not Truth in Lending, I'm sorry.
Freedom of Information.
Freedom of Information was allowed, and we went back and saw a lot of the tapes from the FBI. His family life was threatened. His house was bombed many times. He was portrayed as an anti-American. That's amazing. A man would give a speech about the document that gave us all freedom, and him supporting that and subscribing to that, and all of a sudden he's got to be an anti-American. What was the challenges that he faced? He actually had challenges uniting African Americans and whites. A lot of African Americans weren't, as they say today, feeling Dr. King. A lot of them were afraid. There were a lot of Abernathys because of the things that was happening to Dr. Abernathy King. They changed the spelling of their names. There are a lot of Abernathys today. It's not T-H-Y, it's T-H-E-Y. They changed it, or just changed the name altogether because they did not want what was happening to them, him, happen to them. So he had a lot of problems with African Americans. Do you remember when he got stabbed? Does anybody know who stabbed him? It was a deranged African American woman who didn't like the pressure that he was putting on African American people. He used as strategies nonviolent protests, grassroots organizing, which is very, very difficult, civil disobedience, and his Christian beliefs. He used as strategies. What were the results? Well, some of them that we talk about a lot in history books, the Montgomery bus boycott the Selma March, the March on Washington, which is amazing. 250,000 people for the first time in the history of the country went to Washington, D.C. The Memphis sanitation worker strike, which is where he was killed, where he was murdered. He received the Nobel Peace Prize. I think he was still in his 20s, early 30s when he received that. He organized the SCLC, organized sit-ins and marches, and he eventually, he in the movement influenced the Civil Rights Act of '64, the Voting Rights Act of '65, Fair Housing Act of 1968. And what his plan was to make sure we had full employment. That was the next movement. But also with his speech about the three evils to society, militarism, poverty, and racism, he was challenging government to quit using so much money to start these wars when we can be using them in our own country to support the needs that we had here, especially poverty and unemployment. And a lot of people think this is the one thing where he really crossed the line and why he was actually ultimately murdered. So when you talk about his sacrifices and his struggles, here is a young man who was brilliant in and of himself. When he came to his first church, he was going to be a career pastor. He wanted to write books, travel, speak, and pastor his own flock and take care of his family. But this man gave his life in his 30s. I don't know many people. I've never met anybody. That wasn't me. Who would be willing after going to college, you think you're going to have a career, you're going to get a house, you're going to take vacations, you're going to get promotions. You're not thinking about sacrificing your life in your 30s. This man died when he was 38, 39, almost 50-something years ago, knowing he was going to die. He was doing it, didn't have to. He was a brilliant man. And so those were the results of the fact that he gave his life. I think that I don't think he died in vain. I certainly think he died too soon, simply because there's still social injustice today. I think that we haven't done enough. There have been some changes, but not enough changes, obviously. And did I answer all the questions?
You absolutely did, and we're going to get your final answer. You'd think we were on some game show. You're going to get your final answer later to have we achieved the dream. But at this point, I'm going to ask the students for their reflections on how last night's program affected them. Sebi, what did it mean to you to study this master work and then perform it last night?
It was insane. I've never done a piece like this before. It was very different. I'm used to let's say it's like something this big and go through it. But this was a massive thing. This was a beast. But a good kind of beast. It was a beast. It was a beast that why am I using beast? It was a piece of work that had a true meaning to it. Like there were words in there that at first I'm like, oh yeah, because my mom, she's an ELA teacher, so she knows this speech by heart, and so I've heard this 1,000 times. I'm like, oh, it's a good speech, I love it. But when I actually sang it with the choir, there were moments where I was shaking. Even during the concert, it was emotional. Yeah. There were parts. There's this one part where the guys don't even sing, and the girls start singing, and they're like. I forget how it goes, but I'm right there going, yeah. No, the other one, right after that, literally right after that. The every hill and mountain. I'm like,
mini concert.
Yeah. But in general, learning it was a treat. Singing it with SSC was great. It was like a puzzle. Once we first started off with our rehearsals, and we're like, okay, these are the guys. We got our thing going. I came to one of the girls' rehearsals because I missed my bus, and to be honest, I'm kind of glad I missed my bus because it was a good experience. And then those were all the puzzle pieces coming together. Then we had a rehearsal with the orchestra, and it was different. I wasn't used to singing with an orchestra. I sang with a jazz band before, but I've never sang with a violin and just in general. And then Mr. Abernathy came in. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got the narrator going. And it was just thing after thing after thing. And rehearsals were extraordinary because I have awesome friends in choir. And I made new friends. I'm now good friends with Mr. Abernathy and Miss Diana Campbell. And it was, how do I say this? The song is gorgeous. The words are really impactful. There are times where like, you know, I had to stay on the same note a couple times, but then there's this one part where it always gets me. It's a part where we go like, "This is our hope," and that gets me every time because like it's all of us, an entire choir of college students and high schoolers, and we're still kids. Like, yeah, we're young adults, but we're still kids, and I'm still a kid. I'm basically a baby, and the thought of us, of kids singing these words, we're not just singing it, we're proclaiming it.
That's right. That's right.
I'd say the choir was a musical embodiment of what Martin Luther King was trying to explain.
That is true.
Like let me tell you, before that choir, I was sick to the throats. But right before the concert, I was living off of green tea and cough drops, and I was just praying like, come on, dude, please let me do this one concert. This concert is gonna be fun. It's an amazing piece, and I believe God kissed all of our throats that evening because that was amazing, and I felt closer as a family. Like there were people I didn't know, people I did know, and it was a great performance. What else? I had one more thing. Let's see. Oh, the first time I got the book, I was scared because I had never seen a book like that before, and honestly, I wasn't like ready for that kind of challenge. And we got it like we had just finished our concert. The day before we got the music, so we're like, okay, concert's over. Oh. And we looked at it, and like we got through like the first 2 pages, and it was basically the same note. We're like, oh my god, there's more. Mm-hmm. And at first glance, you're like, oh, it's a lot of ink. Like, ooh, we can't get through this. But slowly, it only took us a month, and for some reason, the choir got stronger. I got to connect with a lot of people, like for real. Like there are a lot of people like, who are you? Who are you? And I'm like, I know you. I know you. And who knew with one song how many friendships and how many connections can happen at one point? Like I didn't believe it. Like I knew music was a powerful thing, but with this song, I knew it was a powerful thing. So I think
it's a beautiful reflection. Hannah, your reflections on what it meant to perform this work.
So I'll just start from like the beginning of first getting it. At the time, that was only my first semester in college, so I was already getting used to the overwhelming amount of stuff you have going on just being in college in general, let alone being a music major in college. But getting the piece, it was very intimidating. Like as she said, it was 38 pages. I was not expecting all the key changes. That was a lot. But it marvels me how well we put it together. As like Sebi was saying, we really did become like a family in this. All of us joined together way more, way closer. I feel like last night was like a very unified, like 30 minutes, but very unified like moment. Looking back, like as I said, like I was a Lyman High School alumni, so for me even to see in my own personal growth of how different I was from then to now is a wonderful growth I got to experience myself, let alone with such amazing work that we had that we got to all grow with. I saw so many of the high schoolers there growing, because I would go in, being close with Mr. Harden as I was, I got to go in sometime during the beginner class and work with a lot of the freshmen, so I spent a lot of time with the freshmen in the last month or so and got to work with them and see how just they grew. I saw how our own concert chorale really, really grew together. We all became very close. We all worked really, really hard on it. And for it being such an overwhelming and such a huge song, and for how quickly for us to pick it up is a marvel in itself. That means we were truly invested. That means we really did care. Like, I wish you guys were able to hear us last night, because you would have been able to hear the passion and the emotion. And then having the orchestra with us was like, just added a beautiful tone, and having Mr. Abernathy there was, the first time I heard the narration, I was like trying not to cry. Like, I'm in rehearsal, I'm trying not to cry, because it was so powerful, so powerful. Having the orchestra with it was even more. Like, it's pretty indescribable, but describable all in one. But yeah, it was really wonderful to go through and experience and be able to work with it and see our growth as a choir, see our growth as a community. And then, as you said last night, which was a beautiful statement, last night's concert was really the embodiment of MLK's dream. It really, really was. So.
Beautiful. Okay. It is time for a break, but because we're in an academic setting, there's a quiz first. Students, may I ask you to help me?
I'm going to agree with Sebi, that part where it says, "This is our hope." To hear 92 young people, and if you know anything about music, it goes unison there, right? So it doesn't break into 8 parts. No. Unison means one, right? And so to have all those voices, this is our hope, this is our dream. And I know in each class we spent time talking about this text, and it was so great to remove myself and just let the students talk about the text and where they were. And I understand that this same conversation was happening in the high schools, that we're not even involved in it, and the students were digesting it.
Okay, out in virtual land, I'm sorry you're not here for the cookies. There's a theme to the cookies. Whoever guesses the theme will be the first person I come to. I'm sorry. I don't want them to fall off, but I'll try to tip them up. Whoops. Let me get this out of your way.
I'm just going to walk down the aisle. There you go.
Yes, you can walk down. Go ahead. Seminole State and life and colors. And? Unison. And black and white unity. Yeah. And the black and white, which we cannot forget. But someday, I have a dream, to paraphrase, that the only thing that will matter to us is the blue and gold. While we're going around, there's water in the back also.
She had one. I'll be right with you. Yeah.
When the young students, right, the young citizens who are going to be, right, which we want them to hear the voice. What was their impact in terms of the meaning? Yeah, that's their major decision. But in terms of application, right, they did this performance. They take away the information to continue.
I think they did, because that's what we asked them. We asked the students, what does this mean to you? Do you believe this? And that was truly the, do you believe this? And we engaged them in that conversation and implored them that if you believe it, you've got to continue the dream. So there was a lot of discussion from the students about taking what we've done. We've got to take this into the, we can't stop on the stage on the 28th. That's where we left her, is that we can't leave it here. And when I say we, I mean the students take away. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole event. Thanks.
He has a lot of issues with.
Sandy, did you have a question for me?
Ready? Did you get a cookie for yourself?
I'm just getting a water right now.
Okay. We're ready to convene.
Wow.
I was like devastated. I'm like,
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was beautiful to see all the students.
There are plenty. Please help yourself to second.
We're ready to reconvene.
I've never, it's, you know, so I jumped in there and I read most of it and tried to, read it like I was still in there for the most part. But the inspiration was here and it behind me while we read.
You all continue to help yourself to cookies and water. We're going to reconvene because this is the portion that we all have been waiting for. First of all, the discussion from each of our panelists, and then questions. Thank you. Questions and comments from the participants here in the room. So we would like to start with Mr. Abernathy. Have we achieved the dream?
Well, let me quote a few people to answer that in the beginning. Maya Angelou, this is what she says. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not to be relived again. And somebody else you might know said this. He said that when he instituted the Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln said Americans need to represent the better angels of our nature and souls. So he expected some pushback. And then there's an author unknown. I couldn't find out who this person was, but this is pretty radical. He says that racism is the black man's burden and the white man's shame, and this is more contemporary. So now I'm going to answer the question with a question. How do we deal with the social injustices that remain and almost stay the same? And as a result, how do we save the soul of the American dream? Simply because in 1970, there are only 500,000 people incarcerated in America. Let me see, is that right? Yes, 500,000 people incarcerated in America. And at the census in 2010, more than 2 million. The stats today are saying that 1 in 3 people incarcerated today is going to be black today. So now the psychologists are saying that we went from slavery to Jim Crow. Jim Crow, you know, I assume that I knew what Jim Crow is, so I don't, a lot of words are being thrown around. I want to be a person that makes sure that we understand what we've been saying, just so that we can all participate in, you know, turning this thing around. I found that Jim Crow was a group of congressmen passing laws that said that, one, blacks are only 3/5 the value of a white man. 2, that they do not have the same rights no matter what the Emancipation Proclamation. They cannot go to public schools, they cannot vote, all those things. Laws were passed by our legal system. This was not just people in sheets or white supremacists saying that you can't do it. Laws were passed by a government that said that you can't do. That's what Jim Crow was. And so when Jim Crow was overturned with the Civil Rights Act 64, 68, the Voting Act was returned when they reversed segregation, public schools, busing, and all that was changed. Now we're incarcerating brown and black people. And at some point, right now, more than, I believe the number is more than 70 million brown and black people are in the, if they're not incarcerated, they're in the correctional system. So you said, well, they're not, at least they're not in jail. Well, what that means, though, do you know what that means? That means that now you can't vote, you can't get a student loan, you can't rent an apartment, you can't rent anything. You can't do a lot of things that normal people need to do just to live. You can't get food stamps. And so, you know, what has happened in our system, no, we don't have slavery, no, we don't have Jim Crow, but now we have, you know, a lot of attorneys that are giving their whole lives and trying to, you know, repel this system of incarceration, social injustice, to keep people out of jail. There are people in life in prison because possessing marijuana. Life in prison for possessing, not selling. So when you wonder, say, are we better now? Or are we heading in the right direction? When you know those kind of laws are in place, now this is another way to disenfranchise people and to reduce people from not participating in the American dream, ultimately.
I'm going to mark you down as a no, we have not achieved the dream. Is that right? No way?
I just didn't want me to say
no.
that. I wanted the facts to say that.
All right. Sebi, have we achieved the dream? No.
I'm just going to answer right away. I don't think so. I don't think we have. Like, it's gotten a little better, but it's not what we have. Well, like, I'm sure Martin Luther King or any colored person or in general any person like with problems like that would say is perfect. Like, I wouldn't say we're in paradise yet. Like, we have had like some rights given back to people who like have not had rights or like had bad views about them. but it's still bad. Like every time I turn on the news, like watch news with my mom, like it's always something about like either a colored person or like something like that. Like, and it's like, well, it's always them. It's not like anyone else. And it's like, you know, and being a Latin person and all the like this hasn't affected me at all. God bless, but there are people from other countries who want to have the same freedoms as Americans do, but from like from drugs or certain things like that that they have, they kind of have the same treatment as some colored people or yeah.
Yeah. We usually say people of color, but we're with you.
Yeah, people of color. Just in general, we haven't reached that goal yet because we're not perfect. People in this world aren't perfect, and I'm praying it'll happen sometime in the future. But for now, we're just gonna have to set our own example and live on every day, trying to be the best person you can be, and show the same love and affection. Like I treat everyone as if I treat my parents. I treat them the same love and comedic way, and I don't care what background you come from. Like I said from the beginning, I just care about you as a person walking on this earth, as your own individual who I can grow with.
I'm going to mark you down as a no, but seeing progress. No. Hannah, how have we done? Have we achieved the dream?
I'm also going to say no. However, I'm going to go into a different point of view. I'm 19, so I'm very much into the teenage, like, very social media active person. And I see way more progress than I know that my fellow adults do. There's so many apps that I have gotten to connect with people from all over the world. I made some really, really good friends from other places, and we only talk online, but it's still amazing to see, and it doesn't matter any type of race. I don't even know where most of them are. Honestly, I don't. They're just a person. They're just a soul. They're still just a life to me. I see so many people just get together, and they don't even care. They don't. A lot of our younger generation is growing up in this ideal of you're just a person, you're just a life, you're just a soul. So no, we're not there yet, especially politically. I don't think we're there yet. Our laws are not there yet, but seeing the generation, just because I'm in that generation, I'm seeing the progress myself of we're just getting more inclusive. Even if our government isn't following us yet, the people in our society are. So not there yet, but we're getting there.
I'm going to mark you down as a no, but seeing progress. Professor Campbell, are we there yet? Have we achieved the dream? You have put together this work last night, reflected on it now for months. Have we achieved the dream?
So I'm probably going to have a little bit of a different perspective. Have we achieved the dream? Until utopia hits this earth, there will always be progress needed, all right? So I absolutely believe that we needed a few of those black and whites still to show that inside of the blue and gold, to show that there is still work. But I'm a believer, I guess, and probably because of my background, so I'll need to share a little of that as well. But I think about in the piece, it said, all God's children, Jews and Gentiles. And in that choir, were there Jews and Gentiles? Yes. Yes. Little black boys and little black girls and white boys will hold hands. Did we hold hands? Hold hands. Yes. That said that we would have Protestants and we would have Catholics. Did we had that. So I'm like Hannah. I think it's the next generation. Yeah. That's where I see that. I see them as the ones that don't care. So I think I have a more optimistic view on it, perhaps. I like that inside of my class, I know I have it all. I know I have an atheist and a Muslim and a Christian, and I see them working their projects together and going and having coffee together. And I'm also going to say that I have been a product of the American dream. My parents are here today.
Would you introduce them to us, please?
I would be happy and honored to do so. Dr. Yazdi Bada and Mrs. Pervez Bada. This is my parents. I'm so grateful to have them here today. But they are you want to talk the embodiment of the American dream. My parents immigrated to America in 1964 with $59. And today, let's just say they're doing real well with their two-seater Mercedes outside. And they worked, and they worked, and they struggled, and they strived, and they sacrificed, and they saved, and they were Indian in going through all of this, never being to this country before, but they reached out, they took this American dream, and they ran with it. So for me, thank you, because of what you did, I am living the American dream. So yeah, we're not there yet, but again, until we have the second coming and utopia, we're not going to get there. So I can accept that and accept that we are taking not even baby steps. Can I say that? I think we started with baby steps. I think we're striding. I think we're taking steps. Maybe we're not striding. Okay, I got carried away. I'll settle down. But I don't think we're in baby steps. I think we're walking. And I think maybe we're walking hand in hand to that final solution.
Perfect. Thank you all. We have time now for questions and comments from participants in the room. What would you like to ask our panelists that they did not cover or that you would like to hear more about? Monica, would you like to be first? I'm going to give you the microphone.
I want to share two very quick scenarios.
Must have that because we have people in
Yes.
land.
I would like to share two very quick scenarios. I am excited that I am a child of a grandparent, great-grandparent, that we know a lot about our lineage. And the wonderful thing about my nation, I say that because our family is a cornucopia of races. And I cannot always express this in an African-American environment, but you can't get any blacker than me. The reason being, I grew up in the 60s on a playground because when my mama sent me to school, she says, Monica, they didn't use the word black then, but she said, Monica, there's good black, there's good white. So I saw all these people, old friends, but she said, Monica, everyone that smiles in your face is not your friend. Real quick, I had a very close little friend named Kathy. I won't give her last name. And we used to sit on the playground and in grade school, first grade. She had this long Cinderella blonde hair. And I sat there, we'd hold hands on the playground. But I lived in a housing project, but not like today. The majority of all the families there had fathers but me. But there was a lady that lived in our project. Her name was Sharon. That's not her, but her name. And she came up to me in our village, housing project, brick, 2-story, and she slapped me at 5 years old, sitting on the playground because I was holding hands with a little white girl. And I went home that night, my nose bled all night long. And my mama was a liberated woman of God. And I told her what happened. And because the people lived in our same apartment building, she went down to Miss Patty Mae, and she took me and she told her what her daughter did to me. She said, I taught Monica that she could play with anybody she wants. And my mother was not afraid. Divorced, single mother, she went right to the issue. Now that's that issue. Now let me share you my issue. Because I was raised in this environment, trust me, there are invisible things, lines that you know nothing of. Unless you got a kink in your hair and brown, you don't know. I had my eyes checked this week. I've been going to this place since my daughters were 12, little girls. And don't call me girl. They call my mama girl. See, that's the meaning. They call my grandmama girl, my mama girl. And I told him, I said, I'm not your girl. Oh, I said, I'm not your girl. I said, my grandma, he didn't want to hear it. My grandmother, my mother went through that. I'm not your girl. I'm Mrs. Abernathy. He doesn't know I have an honorary doctorate of theology. I call him Dr. such and such. But guess what? It's okay. That revealed his heart. See, people that don't have my nap or my color don't know what we deal with. It's invisible. Now, let me get back to this. So in high school, because the way my mama trained me, anyway, the way my mama trained me, we were out after high school after lunch, and we had time in between class, and I was sitting, it was like a bar, like bars, railing, and it was this group of black people, and there was this one very poor white girl, and it was real cold. We all had on our jackets, and we had clothing. She had on a thin dress, really white legs. I didn't know her long, thin hair. So more than likely, she either lived in they had a white project or the colored project. You had to go across the railroad track. But the black people started mocking her, talking about it. You poor white, T-R-A-S-H, you this and you that. Oh my God. I got so upset. I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You ought to be ashamed. Do you know nobody said anything to me? Because I stood up for right. That's all I have to say. It's still going on. People want to demean you, but you'll never know it. When I went to school the first time, as a little girl, my mama said, Monica, sit up front, raise your hand, ask questions. But since I've been in Florida, Monica, don't be too smart. Don't be too smart. It works against you. When you're cerebral and can think for yourself. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
I need to use
Other comments?
excuse me.
Certainly. Out the back door and down the hall. Who else has a comment or a question? I'll bring a microphone out. Silent? Oop. Okay. I'm coming.
Hello. I had a question. Since Sebi brought up being Latino, how do you think the dream impacts other people of color, such as Latinos or Asians and other cultures? And this expands to everybody. I just mentioned that Sebi mentioned that he was Latino.
Okay. So you're asking, like, how does this same conversation have to do with, like, Latinos? Okay. So, I'd say that it's kind of the same thing going on with people of color. Yeah, they have other reasons for discrimination, but they're still trying to. There are good people and there are bad people, and to the naked eye, you can't really tell if they're good or bad, but it's by the character of that person. It's like in the song that we did. It's like, but by their character.
The content of their character.
The content of their character. It's about that, and at the end of the day, it's like I need a black and white cookie to explain this. So this black and white cookie, you see how it's black and white, but on the other side, there's no black and white. We're all the same. Like, there's nothing really different. Like, sure, there are different colors on both sides, but we're all the same. So there's nothing really different about us. So when it comes to discrimination of those races, and I think it's just based on how people feel towards those people. So I don't think it's just people versus people. It's just like lions versus lions trying to go higher. They're just, it's a dark thing. I think it's a dark thing. But I feel like there are good people out there who can stand up, set the right example, and live through it. Because, like they said, we're the next generation, and who knows, maybe for the next generation of Latinos, it'll get better.
So, Christina?
Go ahead.
My take on that is that it's even beyond race, because what we're talking about here are stereotypes regardless. And so I think that's really the discussion here, stereotypes of putting people into any category, whether it be by skin color or by race or by any of those things. And so I think anytime we have stereotypes for anything, there's going to be a little bit of that issue.
Hannah, did you have a comment?
It was wrong, so go ahead.
Okay.
What I'm going to say is that each generation, I believe.
Yes, we have people out virtually. Okay. Each generation, we have more and more role models to see someone who looks like us. Like when I was growing up, I was Lebanese and German. So I had different languages at home, different cultures, and I never really saw anybody like me until I saw Helen Thomas, who was the press secretary for the White House, and I thought, oh my gosh. And Marlo Thomas, who actually, her dad, Danny Thomas, kissed me on a cheek when I was a baby. So he came to our church. But that's when I saw it, because then I said, oh, okay, I have a role model. So it's so hard. But each generation now and now is more and more role models. So we can see, people of color, different nationalities, different religions. People understand what Muslims are. People understand the Jewish faith. They start understanding more. They're seeing more role models. So each generation is more exciting, and there is more hope, because it's like, okay, yes, we can do that. So that's why I think it is getting better. It's not there, but each generation we keep seeing this, So I think it's positive. Okay. Thank you.
Final comments as we wind up? Where we go? Down the aisle? I'm coming. Here we go.
I think I'll leverage on that. The fact is that human beings will be human beings. There are the good, and there are some who are not. And unfortunately, if the question is, will it ever be achieved, the answer is no. Because there will always be certain individuals who do not understand the human needs. I truly believe that we have seen changes. I believe Dr. Martin Luther King made a big difference. He has started a process. It's not going to end. There will always be some nuts who will not understand and recognize human dignity, that each one of us was created by God, and we all have those rights that Dr. King talked about. There will be those who will alienate us and who will do things that we find very unacceptable. The fact, from my perspective, is I've seen lots of changes. The changes have been in the right direction. No, we're nowhere close to where we should be. But we are in that process. And what I would like to express is what you folks are doing out here is making the difference. You see kids in that lineup yesterday. There were the blacks, there were the whites, there were the young, there were the old. But it just was so good to see that today we don't make that difference. Were there people in the audience who probably would still be unaware of how to deal with issues? Yes. But there are fewer and fewer of those. And so God bless Martin Luther King Jr. and the work that he did, and the work that you all are doing here in this college. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Would you all please join me in thanking Professor Campbell and Hannah and Sebi and Mr. Abernathy. It has been our pleasure to bring you a diversity workshop this afternoon that asks the question, have we achieved the dream yet? And the answer, I think, we're all going to have to say no. There is still work to be done. Therefore, Mr. Abernathy, will you come back another time and continue the conversation?
I'd be happy to. Yes.
Thank you. It will be a huge step toward our equity goals to talk and talk and talk and dissect these issues. And I thank you all for coming. Please come and help yourself to a cookie or some more cookies. And thank you all very much. Bye-bye.